Can you trust intuition? In the last video, we talked about how your intuition works and a time that my own intuition saved my life. But can you always trust your intuition? And how can you know when it's leading you astray? We're going to talk about all of that coming up. Make sure you stick around till the end of the video, and I'll talk about one area where going with your gut will greatly increase your odds of being happy with your decisions. The intuitive right brain is constantly reading your environment and picking up details that the more methodical left brain easily misses. When the intuitive system 1 picks up on something that's even slightly out of the ordinary, you get a shot of dopamine in your brain that alerts you that something strange is going on. Whether or not you listen to that feeling can make all the difference. On the one hand, it could result in a potentially life-changing outcome. Perhaps it results in meeting your next relationship partner or saves you from a potentially dangerous occurrence. On the other hand, it could cause you to overreact and make a fool of yourself as you freak out over something that was really no big deal. How do you know which is which? The answer is in understanding how your intuition works and what makes it come to erroneous conclusions. The primary problem with System 1, that is, the fast-thinking part of your brain that's responsible for intuition, is that in order to come up with responses so quickly, it has to make decisions based on patterns that it recognizes. And this makes it very susceptible to systemic errors in thinking known as cognitive biases. For example, a person who is lied to or cheated on in a past relationship might tend to view future partners as liars and cheats. Let's say her old boyfriend used to get a particular expression on his face whenever he lied to her, and now, whenever she sees that expression on her current boyfriend's face, she's just sure he's lying. In reality, that may just be the facial expression of discomfort or even of serious thought, but since the old boyfriend used that facial expression whenever he thought up a lie, she's just certain that every time a person has that facial expression, they're about to lie to her. You can see how this could become a problem. When it comes to the predictive powers of intuition, there are two main varieties. In the first case, you have a lot of experience or skill in a particular area, like a basketball player that's practiced thousands of shots and knows just how much force to apply to the ball to get it into the hoop without having to consciously consider his actions. Because of all your experience, you're able to sense cues and respond to them before your slower System 2 can even process the situation. Seeing this in action appears similar to a supernatural power. Like when a firefighter just knows that a building's about to collapse, he's recognizing patterns that he's seen before and reacting to them. The second type of intuitive prediction is based on biased judgments. The problem is that these judgments generally come with considerable confidence, and unfortunately confidence is in no way linked to reliability. To make matters worse, our slow-thinking System 2, that's responsible for conscious, rational thought, is terrible at detecting our own biased judgments. In fact, we frequently use our rational mind to come up with reasons to justify what we're already feeling. Instead of using logic to call out our intuitive feelings as inaccurately and unfairly biased, we double down by coming up with any kind of rational reasoning we can think of to support what we're already feeling. So that brings us to our central question. When should we trust our intuition, and when should we be wary of it? Well, first off, if you don't have a lot of time, always go with your intuition. If you're required to make a split-second decision, you really have no choice but to go with your intuition because there's no time to calculate a slow, methodical response. In such a situation, there's no point in second-guessing yourself. Likewise, as we discussed before, if you're already an expert in a field, you should trust your intuition. Your intuitive mind will detect patterns long before your rational mind notices them. Your intuition also has a better memory than your rational mind. You've probably experienced a situation in the past when taking a multiple-choice test where your gut told you to pick a particular answer. And in most cases, you likely discovered that your gut was right. The reason is that your intuitive mind detected an association. For example, let's say you had a multiple-choice test that asked you how many miles around is the Earth at the equator. And let's say that you don't know the answer to that right off the top of your head. Why might your intuition help you get this answer right? Well, presumably, if you're being asked that question, you're expected to know the answer. And that means you've most likely read it somewhere or were told the answer by a teacher. So that means somewhere in your mind there is an association between that exact question and the number 24,900. The more times you've seen the statistic, the stronger that association will be. When you see this question on a test, you try to remember the number, but you just can't remember the answer. Your intuition, however, sees a pattern. It says, I'm used to seeing the number 24,900 when I see information about the distance around the Earth at the equator. This causes your System 1 to give you a nudge to pick that answer. So when should you avoid listening to your intuition? Well, in the first case, it's when you have time to think things through. Let's say, for example, you got the same question about the Earth, and the answer that came to your mind was 452. Well, let's think about this for a minute. Does that make any sense? In this case, obviously not. Maybe 452 was the page in your textbook where the topic was discussed, and that was the reason for the mental association. So whenever possible, think about your intuitive predictions to see if they make sense. For example, there was one study where participants were tasked with trying to get a red jelly bean out of a container. In the first container was 1 red jelly bean and 9 white jelly beans. In the second container was 7 red jelly beans and 93 white jelly beans. That means the first container had 10% red jelly beans, and the second container had 7% red jelly beans. Yet the participants picked the second container much more commonly than the first container. This is because their intuitive mind told them that they had a better chance. This is a case where your intuition is clearly deceiving you, and you should use your rational mind to help you make better decisions. If you're interested in learning more, I'll post an Amazon link below for the book, The Invisible Gorilla: How Our Intuitions Deceive Us. It's actually a really interesting read and covers a variety of different situations in which our intuitions lead us astray. Another case where your intuition should not be trusted is when you know absolutely nothing at all about the subject matter. Intuition requires patterns that you can recognize, and so you need at least some background knowledge on the material, with more knowledge being better. Intuition is not going to help you on a multiple choice test covering material that you've never seen before in your life. Before we get to the next video, where I'll teach you how to develop your intuition, here are a few more cases where our intuitive mind tends to fail us. Gamblers may think that if they've lost many times in a row, they're due for a win, even though each trial is independent. Likewise, they might think that a particular table is hot right now, or that they can roll higher or lower numbers by simply rolling the dice softer or harder. People conducting job interviews frequently think that they can better judge the potential performance of a prospective employee than can education and test scores, even though the objective tests have been proven time and again to be more reliable than the opinions of interviewers. Our intuition is biased to notice coincidences while ignoring the countless times that they don't occur. This causes many people to believe they have more powerful predictive powers than they really do. And one of the biggest areas where our intuition fails us is when it comes to empathy. Studies show that our initial instincts are often less reliable than careful analysis. I see this all the time in my line of work. Women will often label men creepy when the guy does something to make them feel uncomfortable. But women tend to be horrible at knowing what the man is actually feeling. Most of the guys that get labeled as creepy are just nervous or uncomfortable because they're out of their element. The women feel this discomfort and label them as creepy. But as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, there's one area where following your intuitions can make you a much happier person. And that's when it comes to making big decisions. People who carefully plan out what car to buy or what home to purchase or whom they should marry are often far less satisfied than people who make a quick decision based on instinct. The first car I ever bought was the first car I looked at. It worked, the price was right, and I drove it without a problem for 13 years. The second car came after looking at a number of options. It's been a lot harder to be happy with that car because I know of all the other things I could have had instead. When it comes to the big decisions in life, making a quick choice and sticking to it can greatly increase your satisfaction. I'm curious about your experiences. Have you ever had a time where your intuition sent you down the wrong path? Or you followed your instinct and everything worked out great? Tell us about it in the comments below. And if you found this video helpful, make sure you give it a like and subscribe to the channel. In the final video in this series, we're going to be talking about how to build your intuition to serve you better in the future. So stay tuned.